Thank you for your commentary. This is Eddie with a big hello from London. Mark is currently away, so you'll have the opportunity today just to hear from me, I'm afraid. This past week has seen some very interesting weekly technical patterns in some very important markets. I'd like to start this week with the E-mini S&P futures in the US, which had an uncalled for and somewhat surprising weekly key reversal up last week, right at the top of the market. However, this ties in with the markets 4 weeks ago breaking higher from a reverse head and shoulders bottom, highlighted on my daily chart, formed between roughly the start of March through to late June. This is a large, very large pattern, and it has some considerable targets topside for it as well. Targets that I imagine will take some time to achieve, but they are still there. Thus we have a primary target X up in the 6800 area, and a secondary, harder to achieve target X1 up in the 1793 area. As I say, quite considerable targets to achieve. Next, we had a weekly key reversal up in the Japanese Nikkei225 index last week. This has seen an excellent follow-on move higher this week to new highs not seen since July last year. Moving over to the currencies, and we just had the one, a weekly key reversal down last week in US dollar, Hong Kong dollar. This is hardly a surprise, as the market has for the last month or so been stuck at the top of its official band of 775 to 785. However, we have not seen any follow through lower this week as yet. Onto the commodities, and we had a weekly key reversal up in Chicago soybean meal futures last week, which has seen the beginnings, if tentative, of a gap filling move higher this week, up and away from the 50% absolute Fibonacci line at 272.10 and towards the overhead resistances. Now, I covered this more fully in my weekly oilseed and veg oils video commentary published last Thursday, and again this coming Thursday. Meanwhile, we had an interesting weekly key reversal down last week in the ICE EUA carbon futures for December 2025. This has seen a nice follow-on lower this week already, though it is seemingly a little tentative right now. Meanwhile, in COMEX Cobalt futures, we had a weekly key reversal up last week, which has not seen any follow-through higher so far. Indeed, we are a little lower in this scarcely traded market. Over now to NYMEX heating oil futures, which was the only one of the fossil fuel energy markets to have a weekly key reversal, which does say something on its own like that. In this case, it was a weekly key reversal up last week, which this week has seen attempts to move higher from Friday's close, but those have not been to the extent of rising above last week's range. We are today now back around last Friday's close. The next three, indeed these last three, which I'd like to discuss, have been somewhat questionable for a number of reasons. The first one is a weekly key reversal down last week in Chicago rough rice futures. This one is questionable due to changeover. The start of this week saw some attempts at trying lower, but we've since pulled back up. The second one is a weekly key reversal up in Chicago wheat futures. The question mark I hang over this market is because I use and have always used daily continuous charts to get a better grip on the longer term picture. The gapping changeover higher early last week created a weekly key reversal up, and some would argue it is artificial, which I can understand, but to me it still exists. This week we have seen an attempted follow on higher, and I cover this more fully in my grains and starches video commentary due out this Friday, including talking about topside target X at 616 and target X1 up at 635. The third and final one is a similar weekly key reversal up in Chicago corn futures, which, for a similar reason to Chicago wheat, has an artificial weekly key reversal up, but only on the daily continuous charts. This one has not been so accommodating, and we have only seen lower prices since Friday's close. I'll cover this more fully in my weekly grains and starches commentary this coming Friday. As always, I'm happy to answer any direct questions, or if anyone who's interested in that, I'll finish this section from London. And I hope that you found these comments useful.
Thank you for listening and watching this broadcast. This weekly broadcast gives the essential market patterns and consequences. Please be aware of the risk disclaimer posted both at the front and at the back of this broadcast. The copyright is Eddie Toftbeek and ADM Investor Services International Limited. And here comes the final important bit.